Hello friends, welcome to Alchem IAS. This is Rajesh again with Indian Express Demystified series coming with today's 14th May newspaper. So first of all about me, I am a doctor. I have done my MBBS from Government Medical College, Chandigarh. I have also worked as Assistant Medical Officer in IOFHS. This is my 5th attempt. I have written mains 4 times, cleared mains in 2019 and 20. So let's start with today's newspaper. So first article in the Indian Express is about government unveiling a roadmap for supply of COVID vaccines. So the government of India, the COVID task force headed by Dr. V.K. Paul, has come with a roadmap which says that by the year end 2 billion doses would be available in the country. So what are the arguments put forward by Dr. V.K. Paul in order to claim that 2 billion doses would be available in the country by the year end? So first is that it is based on their interaction with 8 vaccine producing companies. It is being said that Serum Institute of India, which is right now supplying Covishield, would also come with a new vaccine called Nova vaccine. Second is Bharat Biotech, the company which is supplying Covaxin vaccine would also come with a new nasal vaccine by the right now an experimental stage. It is BBV 154. Third is Biological E, a company. It is working on its subunit vaccine. Zydus Cadila has also applied for license, and its DNA vaccine is currently in the phase 3. Next is Genova. It has also a vaccine which is an mRNA vaccine. At the same time, Sputnik 5 is also coming in India. However, this roadmap of 2 billion doses by the year end, it depends to a great extent on 2 key factors. First is how the vaccine manufacturing capacity is ramped up rapidly, how rapidly it is ramped up. Second is the data about these vaccines that are under clinical trials, about their safety, about their efficacy. These 2 factors are going to determine the success of a target of achieving the target of 2 billion doses by the year end. Some related news is there that center has extended the gap between the 2 doses of Covishield to 16 weeks. So last on 13th May Indian Express also we discussed that increasing the gap between 2 doses of vaccine has certain advantages. For example, immune response is long lasting. So based on that, the gap between 2 doses of Covishield has been increased to 16 weeks now. What it would mean that now more and more with the limited availability of vaccine supply, these vaccines can be administered to a greater number of population. At the same time, there is a news on how rural services center, that is community service center, they have been switched off and they have a tiny fraction of COVID logins. In fact, only 0.1% of registrations are being done at common service centers. So with this, let's move on to the next one. There are 2 articles. One is that these now states are floating global tenders. Now this is a first time that is happening in the history of a pandemic that subnational governments are going for issuing global tenders, which states government which have very limited knowledge, technological know-how, bargaining power, they are issuing global tenders for these companies which are big multinational companies. So all these state governments are complaining that it is a center's job to float these tenders and do the procurement. It should be the distribution that states which have an established track road should focus on. In similar line, there is an editorial called Injecting a Crisis. The states issuing separate global tenders speaks of center's abdication of vaccines. So now in the editorial it is being said that right now India's vaccination drive is in a disarray. What are the reasons why we can say it is in a disarray? There are widespread reports that people going for vaccination at vaccination centers have been asked to come back after some time because of lack of availability of vaccine. Second is that states are delaying their inoculation drive on account of non-availability of enough vaccine stock. Third aspect is that there was a lack of thought process when vaccines were exported from the country. Fourth aspect is that in 18 to 44 years of age group, we are seeing that those vulnerable sections are not getting the vaccine. In fact, there is a dip in rural vaccination drive. So all these factors are saying clearly that India's vaccination drive is in a disarray. However, the government of India continues to be in a sense of denial by first of all asking state governments to procure themselves. In fact, in Supreme Court, the central government has said that their policies would ensure that equity would be ensured in the distribution of vaccine, which is clearly not visible. So why this is happening is because first of all there are many reasons why there is a disarray. There are three aspects pointed out here. First aspect is that the supply chain has been disrupted clearly. The new vaccination policy has resulted in a fragmented supply. Now the market has been fragmented with multiple buyers, multiple sellers, creating a logistical challenge. Third is the tendering process. And there is a need for a single buyer which will bring in efficiency of scale and would have a buyer's power rather than multiple state and private sectors bidding for limited scarce resources, that is vaccine is available. Third is technology related. Pre-registration requirement in COVID app is mandatory for getting the jab. So clearly all these factors are creating disarray in our vaccination drive. Now let's move to next article. This is by the scholar Pratap Bhanu Mehta, Ignoring Palestine. According to the author, this article has been written in the context of the growing violence between Israel and Gaza. The precipitating factor, as we know, was that two Palestinian families which were living in East Jerusalem, there were efforts by Israeli authorities to dislodge them from their stay and to remove them from East Israel. Later on, some conflicts happened at Al-Aqsa Mosque, and these conflicts are now accelerated as the time has gone by. According to the author, there are three responses that this crisis is witnessing. One response is that of indifference approach. Second aspect is the colonial approach, and third is the humanitarian approach. As we can see globally, the indifference approach is the go-to option that all these countries are adopting in the international politics. This is manifested in fact it is a dominant response, and it may be called as moral indifference. In fact, Palestinian cause has been forgotten and has been abandoned by all the stakeholders. US, even Arab countries are also using it as an opportunistic tool rather than having a long-term stake into the issue. Second aspect, even USA is playing the politics. In fact, Donald Trump's actions during his presidency clearly showed that the US interests do not lie in going towards the Palestinian issue, and it came with a strategy to give whole of the Jerusalem to Israel. So this is the dominant response. Colonial response has been adopted by Israeli authorities. Israel in fact is using the colonial mechanisms. In fact, it has been termed as something called 100 years of war on Palestine by Rashid Khalidi, who is a professor in Columbia University. The 100 years of war means that the roots of the problem are not present in the recent events. Rather, it goes back as 1947, when state of Israel was created. In fact, that events of 1947 are known by the word Nakba, which is now we can see on social media post what is Nakba. So this Nakba is the means it is a Palestinian word meaning catastrophe, which Palestinian people use to signify to recall to the 1947 episode when 500,000 Palestinians were displaced from their homeland, and they were made to migrate to unknown places. Afterwards also 7-year wars, the recent actions, all these colonial disposition, property disposition, or using hard military, killing people, using tear gases. This has been the approach of Israel in dealing with the Palestinian issue. Last is the humanitarian issue. It is clearly humanitarian approach is lacking in international politics. In fact, it is most visible in the field of literature, where what we are seeing is that now literature is being made on what are the emotional and socio-economic impacts on the families that have been impacted by the belligerent attitude of the Israeli authorities in the region. In fact, there is a book by Colum McKennan's Epirogen, which details about the story of two families, two characters who lost their children in this conflict. So clearly, according to the author, the humanitarian approach and the indifference approach will not be able to stop Israel in pursuing its colonial approach. Rather, what we need is that all these states in international politics, they should jettison their narrow approach and go for an moral arguments in order to rein in the policies of Israel, where it is disempowering the Palestinians day by day. With this article comes to an end. The next article is about a sword over the scalpel. So right now, according to the author, healthcare officials are facing a very critical moral dilemma because of the rise in the cases, number of ICU admitted cases. Now clearly there would be a need to the resources are scarce, so the prioritization, and they would have to select which patient to give the ventilator to. Would they give a ventilator to younger people or an older people, with or what other circumstances should take into account while deciding how a ventilator should be given. This decision will have an impact, in the future can turn into a legal trouble for the doctor concerned. This is on account of multiple reasons. First is that during the pandemic, the decisions, the type of decision taken would be different from what is done during the normal day-to-day affairs. Constitutionally, if we say, we have two articles which have bearing on this issue. We have Article 14 and Article 21. Article 21 says every citizen has a right to life. Article 14 says there is a right to equality. So this means the life of each and every citizen as per the constitution is equal, whether he is young or he is old. So all have equal amount of right to life. So based on these principles, jurisdiction has emerged about the medical standard of care. These standard of care in India. So this is the minimum standard of care that should be provided to all the citizens equally. Providing ventilator support comes under standard of care whether a person is children or a person is elderly. Now, if a doctor takes a decision to withdraw a ventilator from one patient, clearly standard of care, that minimum that was expected, is not being followed. Now there are fears about a litigation coming forward. In this regard, there is section 4 of Epidemic Disease Act. So it exempts suits or legal proceeds taken in good faith. However, this goes completely against the constitutional provisions of Article 14 and 21, and hence the relatives of the patients who meet with the mortality are going to take the healthcare professionals to the courts. In this regard, there is an urgent need by government to either come with a legislation or ordinance or rules in order to detailing how in a crisis like situation what should be the priorities and what should be the criteria on which the decision of a healthcare professional should be based. Some protection to a healthcare professional from the legal actions arising out of it should be provided through these mechanisms. In fact, we can take example from the US. US has something called crisis standards of care. Normal standards of care are different, crisis standards of care are different. Similar kind of document should be made by our government authorities, so that long-term impacts of the decision taken during this pandemic should not impact the career of the healthcare professionals. With this article, let's move on to the next article, crisis and a price barrier. So here the author is saying these state governments which are now having this vaccine policy, which they are individually going for global tenders, there is a need to form consortium by them. Even ideally, it would be best if center goes does the negotiation with regard to the prices of these vaccines. However, as the new policy says that it is the state and private sector that would have to compete in the open market in order to get these limited scarce resources. So in fact, according to these authors, there are advantages of a single buyer. Single buyer promotes what in economic terms is called buyer's power. A buyer's power would ensure that the bargaining power of the buyer is more than that of a seller. So how this consortium is going to help in ensuring that better vaccine procurement happens? First benefit would be that pre-purchase agreements would be made in such case of scenario. Such scenario, pre-purchase agreements with vaccine suppliers and the vaccine buyers would be made, and this will provide more certainty to vaccine manufacturers to ramp up their production capability according to the need of the suppliers. So a single concerted effort to sign pre-purchase agreement would give better signals to these manufacturers to ramp up their production capacity. Second aspect is that if there is a consortium and there are some if there is not a consortium and if there is a consortium, private buyers are there. If private buyers are there, a decision of any one of these private buyer to delay their buying would have an impact on others also, because others would then get less. The cost of the vaccine would be different for there. However, if consortium is taking the decision with regard to buying of the vaccines, in that particular case the price would be the impact of one policies of one on the other segments of the consortium would be minimized. Third aspect is that the vaccine certainly would be more affordable, and if it is more affordable, it would be more accessible by the citizen. In fact, a survey was conducted about willingness to pay for this vaccine by by the author. A preliminary survey was conducted, and it was found that considering the low buying capacity of Indians, if even at the present low prices, people would not be willing to pay for the vaccines. Consider our socio-economic landscape of our citizens, where we have very low per capita income. So with this, let's come to the next article about bank and housing finance companies. Right now what we are experiencing is that RBI has cut repo rate. So repo rate, what is repo rate? It is a rate at which RBI charges and the banks borrows from RBI at for short term. So this repo rate reduction is transmitted variously by banks and housing finance companies. So it has been seen that banks are better transmitting the repo cut, and housing finance companies are not transmitting that much of the repo rate cut. So what are the reasons and what can be done? What are the reasons? Reasons are that banks are using MCLR and external benchmarking in order to decide their interest rate, while housing finance companies, they are using the prime lending rate criteria. So prime lending rate criteria, if we go, what are these mechanism? MCLR mechanism is that if a bank has there are certain costs associated with a loan, there are some fixed cost, there are certain marginal costs. So based on these marginal costs, some formula will be designed that if these marginal costs change, the interest rate would be changed accordingly. In fact, external benchmarking is a new one, where rather than marginal cost based lending rate, the banks would be free to decide any external benchmark. Say external benchmark can be, say, government security yields, or they can be repo rate. So it is outside the bank. So this is the best mechanism, and it transmits the repo rate in the best way. It is more transparent mechanism. However, housing finance companies are using priority lending prime lending rate criteria. In fact, in 2019 only, housing finance companies have come under the regulations of RBI. So what is the problem for customers right now because of this, and what these customers can take? The transparency in floating interest rates. What are floating interest rates? Which are not fixed interest rates. These are interest rates which change according to the dynamics of the market. So with regard to floating rates, there is not less transparency. What the customer can go is that they can change this floating interest rate to the rates which are more comfortable for them by paying something called conversion fee. This conversion fee would be based on their the cost would be based on their CIBIL score as well. So this is an advice to the customers who should check the rates. If their floating interest rates are higher than the prevailing interest rates in the economy, because the repo rates are being cutting, then they can pay the conversion fee and convert their mechanism, how they are going to what interest they are going to be charged by the housing loan that they have taken. So with this, our today's newspaper come to an end. We are also right now, there was a delay in availability of these notes of the lectures. Slowly that delay has been sorted out, that problem has been sorted out, and now you can find the notes in a very concise way with minimum advertising and on the link below. So with this, thank you so much for watching our video. I would like to like and comment on the videos, and also subscribe to our channel Alchem IAS. Have a nice day.